Hello, my name's Oliver and welcome to my workshop. In a previous video I talked about how I'm replacing this weedy mini suspension with this chunky boy Honda CR-V rear suspension. The reason I'm doing that is because it's better at suspension stuff, it's much stronger and it's compatible with my Honda engine. The problem with that is the standard hubs for the CR-V are 5-bolt. And they use a little weedy shaft. And the little weedy shaft may be alright for some people, but I wanted more. So, I've got some Honda Ep30 Type R shafts. And it just so happens that my suspension geometry works out perfectly with Ep30 Type R shafts. So, that should all be good then. Except for the fact that this spline isn't compatible and I don't want 5-bolt hubs because my front hubs are 4x100. Older Civics use 4x100 hubs. However, they also use the little weedy shaft. No good. So, at great expense, I've got custom from America 4x100 chrome molybdenum ARP studded hubs that use the big boy shaft. Great stuff. However, these are for a Civic and not a CR-V. So we have some machining to do before we can fit them. When all of this is done, it will mean that I can finally locate the engine and the suspension in the back of Pandora and we can finish off doing the chassis. That won't be done in this video, but it gets us in the right direction and that's the important thing. Let's get stuck in, shall we? Okay, so I've removed the hub. The next job, which obviously destroys the wheel bearing, the next job is to get the circlip out, which is like a spring clip that holds in the wheel bearing. And to do that you need some circlip pliers, which it's almost impossible to do this job without. People use screwdrivers and stuff like that, but really it's pointless, it's a massive faff and you'll be there for half an hour. The easiest way to do it is buy some circlip pliers, they're not very expensive and they make the task loads easier, and then keep your circlip. Because sometimes you buy a wheel bearing and they, depending on the brand, they don't come with a circlip. But if you have a spare circlip and you need a wheel bearing and then it doesn't come with a circlip, at least you've got one. Keep everything, just in case, because it always comes in handy. It's also important to note that the wheel bearing on a CR-V is the same on the back and front. It's the same size. When you look it up on a computer, on the internet it comes up as front and rear wheel bearings, but when you're at the car accessory place and they order the wheel bearings for you, they come up as just fronts. But apparently it's the same wheel bearing, so we shall see. Oh. Come on. There we go. And out it comes. Right, keep that safe and make sure you don't bend it getting it out. Next thing to do is knock out the wheel bearing. So, in a perfect world, I would now use my very large hydraulic press to press the wheel bearings out. However, this isn't an ideal world and I don't have a big hydraulic press because I spent most of my money on that. So, instead, I've got 2 blocks of wood. I've got the 44mm socket, which is unique to the 2CV wheel bearing, ironically. And I have a big copper hammer. And now I'm going to proceed, or brass hammer, and I'm going to proceed to smack it until it falls out. And these Honda wheel bearings are super tight, so it sometimes takes some doing. My advice is to put them in the sun for a bit. I did the last one by putting it on top of my parents' wood burning stove for about 25 minutes and then it came right out really easily. I've done this one by putting it in the sun because it's the middle of summer and it's toasty, hence the shorts. So warm it up and that helps everything to expand up, but if it's freezing then put it in a warm room for half an hour or something. Come on, bugger. It's coming. out. There we go. There we go. And I'm doing this in honour of all the Hispanic dudes who have a Honda on jack stands in the driveway. Seems like every other person on YouTube that has a Honda is some Hispanic dude on jack stands in their driveway. And I have to say thank you to them all, because a lot of the information that I discovered in order to do this was gleaned from videos of Hispanic dudes with Honda Civics on jack stands in the driveway. So thank you guys. There you go. Ha ha! Bit of brake clean and a cloth. Of course, get it nowhere near you and nowhere near anywhere where you're going to be welding either. The reason why I haven't cleaned these up and made these pretty is because there's quite a bit of work to do on them yet, and I want to wait until everything's in place, and then I'm going to change bearings and change bushes and make them super pretty. But a wheel bearing's easy and it can just be masked off, so it's not so bad actually. And if you're wondering why these are rust free, it's because they're from southern France, where they don't grip the road. Now here we have our big hub from the rear of a Honda CR-V, and you'll notice that it's huge. The reason that it's huge is because it's designed to run on a big four-wheel drive that has a combination drum brake, disc brake. So it's a disc brake that has a drum parking brake inside that mechanism, and it's huge and it's incredibly heavy. We're not going to be using that, obviously, but that's why this is so big. And this is our fancy drag racing front Honda Civic hub. The reason for this is basically, like I said, it's drag racing. Drag racing in America, and drag racers want to run the huge shafts, and they want to put 400 horsepower through the front wheels of a car for some reason. Fortunately, thank you to Honda Civic drag racers, because they've managed to make something that we can make work. And you'll notice that the CR-V hub is much taller than the Civic front hub. And the reason for that is that the brakes on the CR-V are like this weird turducken brake design. It's a drum brake with a disc brake on the outside of it, which we don't need because we don't weigh 1,600 kilos. But that unknown size, because obviously the two different heights, meant that I didn't know my track width up until now. My track width is the width of the car, or the width between the wheels. We thought we'd figured it out, and then we noticed that this is much thicker than the standard hubs that we wanted to be using, and so it was important to wait until now, get everything sorted, get everything fitted, and then we can measure it. And today, for the first time, we'll actually know what it's going to be. So we haven't been able to put our suspension in or bolt anything in or create brackets or anything up until now because we didn't know the width. And hopefully these will allow us to be much skinnier than we previously were, because it was looking like the track width of the car was going to be almost the same as the wheelbase, meaning the car would be square. And it already looks like a giant Hot Wheels toy, so we didn't want it to cross that line into being ridiculous, and hopefully this will help prevent that, as well as giving us the same PCD, which is pitch circle diameter, in other words the spacing of the wheel bolts, as our MX-5 front suspension. So we'll have the same bolt pattern all the way around the car. It's almost like we planned it. That's great news, and it fits on. Unfortunately, when you put the upright on, it doesn't fit because you can't fit the nut on the end. This is the perfect example of you don't know what you've got until you've got it all in front of you and you can see it. You can look online and look on forums and you can look at drawings and try and figure stuff out that way. But until you've got all the components in front of you and you mock it all up, you simply don't know what you've got. And you don't know what problems you'll run into. I thought we were going to have to bore out this centre of this hub, which I really didn't want to do. And it turns out we don't have to do. You see, I've made this dummy wheel bearing, so I've ground down the outside and ground down the inside of the bearing you've just seen me remove, so that it now is a dummy fit really easily into the upright. And it fits, which is great news. And the backs of the studs don't rub on the hub, which is something I was concerned about, but that's not a problem. Great news. The one thing that is a problem is the one thing that I hadn't thought of, which is, by the time we've got a hub in here, and we've got a wheel bearing in here, the shaft, that is a Honda shaft, doesn't fit into the Honda upright. The shaft fits into the hub, but it doesn't have the clearance, and it actually rubs on the upright. So, like I say, good news, I don't have to bore out the hub. What I do have to do is bore out the back of the upright in order to accept the shaft. That might sound a bit scary, but it really isn't, because these uprights were designed for a 1,600 kilo SUV with big off-road tyres. And Pandora is a metric ton lighter than that CRV, than that SUV. So, the really good news is, I was planning on lightening these uprights anyway with some strategic kind of smoothing and softening of edges and removing of casting marks and stuff like that. So, it's not going to remove any of the strength from the uprights, because Honda were very good to us and they've left plenty of meat on them. And they're incredibly strong. So the good news is we can remove a bunch of weight from them. We can make our standard Honda Civic Type R shafts fit. Like I say, it's simply because Honda never planned on putting this shaft in this hub, in this upright, should I say. And if you're about to make a 1,000 horsepower CRV, you may want to pay attention to this, because I can't see any other reason why you'd need to do this. But yeah, we're going to have to grind out the back and make it fit. But it's good news, because it reduces weight, it's more than strong enough anyway, and it means that we don't have to bore into our exceedingly expensive hubs, which is good news. Okay, so after much work, this is a before and after, and we haven't actually removed that much. We've basically just put a radius on it, and none of this is really structural anyway. It works out at about 300 grams of cast steel, which is not much at all, but it will help my unsprung weight, which is nice, and my big shaft now fits in the tiny little upright, which is good. Because we don't have to bore out the hub, the suspension is now moving inboard slightly, and that means that our rear track is actually narrowing just slightly, which is really good news, because I was actually concerned that Pandora was going to be a bit wide, but every little helps, as they say. This is a carbide burr. It's usually used for porting engines, and I could have stripped them down and put them in the lathe, or if I'd had a big like Bridgeport mill, I could have put them in a Bridgeport mill. I didn't want to strip them down because it's not time for that yet, and I'm worried that with the state of the bushes that they won't go back together again the way that they are now. And that's a pain in the backside, but I'm trying to get all my suspension geometry right and stuff like that. So I'm doing it the hardest way possible in order to keep them as much of one piece as possible, and then I can get all my chassis set up and stuff like that, because I don't want to go one step forward, two steps back. So slowly grind it away forever. It's better than using a piece of 100 grit sandpaper, but only just. So what started off as an afternoon's work has turned into a multiple day odyssey, and I'm kind of regretting not stripping them down and chucking them in the lathe, although it would have cost me more work later on down the line. And now I've started, I might as well finish. I'm nearly there. I just have to keep trying them, checking the clearance, and unfortunately my hub nuts have not arrived, because of course I have to use a CRV upright, a CRV wheel bearing, a Civic Type R Ep30 shaft, and a Civic Type R Ep30 hub nut, because it's a much bigger hub nut, and they haven't arrived. So it's a good job I made my dummy wheel bearing, because I can still get my widths. That's the good news. The bad news is that I'm still at this because it has to have the right clearance. It can't be close, or it can't be close enough. It has to be bob on, because once we put the hub nut on and it all gets pulled together, if it rubs, it'll weld itself together, and we can't have that. So, like I said, doing this kind of thing, it is a precision job, but it is a precision job that can be done by hand. You just have to really take your time, and there's a lot of finishing work to do. The good news is that we've shaved, over 300 grams off each one of these uprights, which is huge for our unsprung weight. So actually removing this weight, this excess meat off here, because they're massively overbuilt. I mean, I could probably chop half of this material off, to be honest, and it'd still be more than strong enough. I'm not going to. I'm removing the minimum possible, because the whole idea of using these overbuilt components is that I live in a place that has like big ruts and stuff at the sides of the roads, and I'll be able to chuck a wheel in the rut to, in an emergency or whatever, and not rip a wheel off. So that's the idea, and this is the benefit of using these overbuilt components, and why I didn't go for something like a formula upright and then make my own arms, is that formula uprights are designed to break away in an accident, and I didn't want that, because I live in a place where it's like tarmac rally central. Like there are places where if you were going fast, you would get airborne. There are places that have big ruts at the sides of the roads and nowhere to pass. And it's a reality of this car that it will have to be pulled onto grass to get around other cars and stuff like that. Even, just meeting a tractor coming the other way. So it can't be super low. Although it will be, it will have an aggressive stance. It will be a rally car stance. It won't be slammed and scraping the floor. But all of the suspension unit has to be able to take that strain again and again and again for years and years and years. And the benefit of using the super overbuilt stuff rather than something that is super flimsy and lightly built is that you can actually grind away material like this, lighten them up and make them equally as strong while being a bunch lighter. So removing this material is actually increasing the grip of Pandora while helping us fit a giant shaft in that should last forever. So we've finally got both of these uprights bored out and spinning freely. The way that I did it, I painted the back of the upright, put the shaft in, spun it, saw where it touched, and remove material from that area, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. The shafts have been in these uprights probably about 100 times between the two of them. But we're finally there, and I'm currently fighting the temptation to polish the back of the uprights, because there is some machining marks in there and stuff that I'd like to sand out and make pretty, even though no one's ever going to see it but me. But the one thing stopping me from polishing the back of two uprights is that I know I've got to sand them before I paint them. Because as many people who've watched these videos for a long time will know, I hate the underneaths of cars being black. Can't stand it, utterly despise it. The reason why you paint things black is to hide things, and that generates massive problems when you need to go under your car and work on your car because you can't see what you're doing. Every time I work on my 2CV, everybody says, oh my god, I can't believe how easy it is to see underneath your car. The reason is, all the underneath of my car is silver, and so, including all my suspension components, so I can actually see what I'm doing, and it makes rust easy to spot, and it makes things like cracks and damage and leaks really easy to spot. So I'm going to be doing a very similar thing with this suspension and the underside of Pandora. Rally cars do exactly the same thing. That's the reason why all rally car engine bays, despite what the exterior colour may be, they're all painted white. And that is so that you can spot leaks, you can spot problems, you can spot cracks, and you can actually see what you're doing when you're working in your engine bay. So I'll be doing the same thing with these, which means I have to sand everything back. And like I said, I'm going to clean up some of the casting lines and stuff on these anyway, so I'm not going to be super OCD about it now. Let's pop these back in, shall we? And mock them up. Oh, no wheel bearings in as well. I'm not putting my wheel bearings in until my hub nuts arrive, because before I put wheel bearings in, I'm going to mock it up with my dummy bearing and the hub nut on, and just check that I'm not touching once everything's all pulled together, because this has to be perfect. That's another reason why I'm not cleaning it up massively yet. I'm going to wait until it's ready to all go together and do a final check on it, because I'm that person. OCD! Right, let's get these in, shall we? Right. We now get our dummy bearing and we pop it in like there we go. If only the real ones went in that easy. Now, obviously I'm not putting the wheel bearings in now. I've bought some SKF rated wheel bearings for a CRV, which is rather funny because SKF rated wheel bearings for a CRV in such a lightweight car should last my entire lifetime and then some. But if I've come this far, if I've bought the I've bought the best hubs that I can. They're made of chromoly. They've got ARP studs, so I can put big long wheel nuts on them, so they'll support the wheel really well. There's no point me cheaping out on a wheel bearing, so I've bought the really expensive ARP ones, SKF ones. So they've got to go in, but I can't do any of that until my hub nut gets here, because I need to check my clearances again on the back and all of that. But I'm really happy. Once we've got the engine in the right place, once we've measured the track width, we can then sort out the back of the chassis and all of that. However, we're going to have a brief... God, the sparrows are noisy. All the sparrows are fledging, so there's baby sparrows everywhere. We've got house martins up there, and there's a red tail just up there. You might be able to see it at the bottom of the nest. But there's a red tail just above the Allen keys. Nesting. The workshop has turned into spring watch because I don't have a proper garage door. But we're going to have a brief holiday from Pandora so that I can order a lot of stuff and I can do a lot of working out. That gives stuff plenty of time to arrive, because the one problem with doing car stuff on YouTube is when you order parts and there's a world health crisis and there's Brexit and all of that, stuff has been a bit delayed, and I've been waiting for parts to arrive and stuff like that, and I can't be waiting for parts to arrive in order to film a video, and I can't count on parts arriving to film video. So we're going to take a brief break from Pandora to do some work on the Diane. Now, if you don't know, the Diane's been massively popular on this channel in the past, and it belongs to my mum and dad. Obviously, I owe my dad a big debt of gratitude for helping me out on this. And so I'm going to spend some weeks working on their daily driver, which means they're going to be using my daily driver, my 2CV. But I'm going to bring the Diane in the workshop, and in over 3 years of ownership, they've hardly put a spanner to it other than servicing it. It's been an absolute workhorse. It's been fantastic. It tows a trailer, which for a car with a 36 horsepower engine, I think it's 36, might be 38, I don't know. But for a car with a little 2-cylinder engine, 602cc, it does tow a trailer, and it's an absolute workhorse. It's been superb for them, but it needs some work. It's a bit tired in places, and I'll fill you in on all that stuff in a future video. But I'll make a video of everything that's wrong with it, just like I did this. But I'm going to spend a few weeks working on their car to pay them back for being so supportive and awesome. And like I said, there's a lot of people that like those Diane videos. So, thank you all for watching. If you want to support this video, the best thing you can do is share videos with your friends and comment down below. Tell me which is your favourite project car. That's something that I'm really interested in knowing. Obviously, your input to your experiences watching these videos is massively helpful to me making them, because I want to make videos that you enjoy. So tell me, what's your favourite project? Do you like Pandora best? Do you like my 2CV the best? Are you looking forward to the Diane videos? Let me know. It's a really weird car with really weird suspension, and we're going to be doing a bunch of work on it, so that will be really interesting. And we're going to be doing it all as my dad wants it and all that, because it's my mum's dream car. It's a replica, an exact replica of a car that my mum had when she was young, that she couldn't look after because the parts weren't available then, but now they are. So we're going to be sorting out my mum and dad's dream car, because it's not perfect. Like I say, it's a daily driver. We're not doing a restoration on it. We're just getting it up to a really good level. So you've got that to look forward to next week. Thank you all for watching. Please be good to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye.